The longest government shutdown in history ending without major concessions going to the Democrats. We'll hear from Congressman Paul Tonko on his focus now that the government is back open.
Plus, the state is delaying new energy legislation. Hear from building experts on the impacts this will have.
Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. After 43 days, the government is now reopened.
Shuttered agencies are back opened up. Delays, cutbacks will likely ease in the coming days. Federal employees will soon be getting all that back pay. Although when and who will get that pay, that remains unclear.
The Agriculture Department says SNAP benefits will be available. New York had been paying to keep the benefits running in the state.
The final House vote came down mostly along party lines, with 6 Democrats joining nearly all the Republicans passing the legislation. The only New York Democrat who voted to end the government shutdown, Tom Suozzi, the reasons he gave for his vote included the situation at airports and government workers going without pay. He went on to say, quoting now, "If my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are willing to work together to address this health insurance affordability crisis by extending the premium tax credits, then we will have accomplished something meaningful."
I spoke to Congressman Paul Tonko about the shutdown ending. Here's his reaction.
Congressman, I know the last time we spoke, we were in a government shutdown. Things have since changed from that time. But what can you talk about the government reopening? Because I know you were against it, against the vote.
Well, look, the whole thing about making certain we could avoid sticker shock, the skyrocketing premium impact that is coming the way of the healthcare consumer is something that we thought we needed to address. The whole effort here is to address affordability, and healthcare is amongst those issues, right? The essentials, the cost of housing, the cost of groceries, the cost of utility bills, and of course, healthcare. So this effort was to make certain that with the sunsetting of tax credits for a number of people, tens of millions, where they would see doubling or tripling in cases for the rise in their insurance premiums, we wanted to make certain we could avoid that sticker shock. And so that has been the whole journey since this 7-week period of trying to convince our counterparts in the House, in the majority, the Republican majority in the House of Representatives, to act accordingly. Throughout my tenure in the House, I've been asked 60 to 70 times over by the Republicans when they're in charge to vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They have never had a vote to replace. They never had a plan. The closest they came was with President Trump saying he had a concept of a plan. But that doesn't cut it. You need to make certain that you're meeting the demands of the consuming public, the health consuming public, and you need to meet the demands of all of the infrastructure, hospitals, nursing homes, clinics, and the like, and our labs. So they're very dependent on Medicaid and Medicare revenue streams. And, when you cut, as the Republicans did, $1.5 trillion out of Medicare and Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, you should expect that there's going to be a huge shock to the system.
Now, where do things currently stand when it comes to those healthcare subsidies? Are they going to be is this a conversation that's just going to be kicked down the road to January, or is this something that you guys will be voting on in the near future?
The plan I was asked to vote on was a plan devised by the Senate. The leadership in the House said, we voted on our bill, passed it over to the Senate, and left town. That's not how the system works. Until you get an agreement amongst the executive and the 2 houses of the legislature, you didn't complete your business. So here we have an agreement, a tacit agreement, to bring a vote on subsidies in the Senate, not guaranteeing a passing, a successful vote, just that you would hold a vote. That isn't good enough. That's not good enough protection for the many people, the tens of millions that will see a doubling or tripling in their healthcare premiums. The Speaker Johnson, has indicated that he was not certain he would call for a vote in the House. So there's not enough guarantee here. And we're going forward in a loosely held plan that is not consumer friendly. And furthermore, there was a hidden tactic to, in the 11th hour, bring in a opportunity, a slush fund paid for by the taxpayer for 8 senators, where they could sue the federal government and collect millions of dollars. Why would we approve such a terrible plan? And that's where it stands right now. There's talk of maybe repealing that measure with the senators, but it's already passed out of the Senate. I don't think they're going to revisit it.
Ideally, what would you like to see? Would you like to see these
Well,
subsidies extended for another year
absolutely.
indefinitely? What would you like?
Well, we have already moved on a motion to discharge. That motion, which requires 218 signatures, would allow for a vote on extending the subsidies. Otherwise, we're going to have, unaffordable outcomes, inaccessible outcomes, and it's a right. It's a guarantee. It should be a guaranteed right for consumers to be able to afford their healthcare, quality healthcare.
Now, I know during the shutdown, a lot of people were saying, why are lawmakers at the federal level getting paid when they're not in session? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I had ordered the House to withhold my check while we were in these negotiations in this shutdown. I think it's only fair. We represent a lot of federal employees. If the federal workers are going to go without a paycheck, if certain elements of the federal government are not getting paid, then I should join with those forces. So we had asked that my check be held until this process is over, now that the shutdown has been completed. But the business still remains. We're in the middle of a battle, not at the end. We need yet to address the affordability of healthcare. And how you do that is by addressing the credits that we had for working families out there to make this affordable. Look, the goal in the beginning of the process, sessions ago, was with the Affordable Care Act introduced by then President Obama, was to relieve the pressure on the emergency rooms, where that was the segue to healthcare. Not the most strategic and most effective way to do it. And then to make certain that there was affordability. Tens of millions of people that were previously uninsured or underinsured were success stories, with the numbers climbing drastically for the good, for people to have health care. And, if we don't do this, there's a dilemma, because you would then have that return to the emergency room being the gateway to health care. And you're going to have all of us paying for this in our insurance premiums, known as bad debt and charity. When these folks who will not have insurance show up for health care in the emergency room, the cost is not going to be picked up by the hospital. It's going to be picked up by bad debt and charity, which then filters itself into the premiums that we all pay.
Now, when it comes to the paycheck question that I asked, do you think that there should be a law that changes how it currently is in the federal government when it comes to government shutdowns?
Well, people are looking at changing that so that there's an outcome that is not repeated like we saw this year. The real purpose, though, is to make certain that we go forward and not have these extraordinary long shutdowns. This could have been avoided. The Republicans have the White House. They are the majority party in both the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. They could have solved this. It's in their hands. They had ways to solve this. They chose not to come to the table. My opinion was there were some political reasons they didn't want to come back to town to do business. One amongst them, prime perhaps amongst them, was that they would then be required to seat Congresswoman Grijalva, who is the most junior member of the House, recently elected some weeks ago. She waited weeks to get installed, to get sworn into the House of Representatives. Why? Because she guaranteed out there during her election and after it that she would be the 218th signature on the motion to discharge, with the Epstein files being the case at hand. I think it was a political strategy that avoided us coming to work. We could have had people working and getting paid in the federal government. We could have taken care of that business in piecemeal fashion, and we would have been at the table with weeks of work behind us now of how to resolve the premium shock, the the skyrocketing impact that we'll see for premiums for healthcare for the people I represent and for healthcare consumers across the country.
Now, I know you're in the House of Representatives, but what do you think about the Democratic leadership in the Senate? Do you think that Senator Chuck Schumer is doing a good job?
Well, I think basically leadership here with the Democrats has been making certain we echo the message that it's about affordability for middle-class families, affordability across the board with utilities, with groceries, with housing costs, and yes, with healthcare. We need to maintain that messaging, and so leadership should keep us working together. Now, if there was failed leadership in the Senate, they need to take care of that. But I think in terms of a Democratic strategy, has been and will continue to be affordability as the focus and as the desired result.
So you do think that Senator Chuck Schumer is doing a good job in his position?
I'm thinking that basically the Democrats have been sound in getting the focus on affordability and on healthcare. We witnessed that in the elections of recent. If there were hiccups in that process, they need to be addressed in the particular House, in the U.S. Senate.
I know during the shutdown, SNAP benefits were a huge talker and everyone was talking about it. Do you think New York State will be reimbursed for paying those benefits in full to those who are recipients?
I hope they will be. They should be. You know, what I found very cruel and unnecessary was that a contingency fund set up by Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. Senate and in the House, in the case of a yet to be completed budget negotiation, we would use that contingency fund for payment for individuals that required SNAP assistance. For this president to not reach that to that fund was a cruel approach. And then when the court case was brought by a number of concerned parties, the district judge said, it is in accordance with the law. You need to pay the programmatic efforts out here to get food to the people. You need to distribute the food to the people. He still insisted on not doing it, and then further said, if states assist, they will not get reimbursed. How cruel do you want to be? This cruelty that was added to the equation was unnecessary and unacceptable. And I think the executive needed to do much better in throughout this process.
Now we're running out of time, but is there any message that you think New Yorkers need to know? Any message you would like to share?
I would share that we're going to continue. We're in the midst of a battle to get affordability addressed, certainly for a number of items, groceries, housing, utilities, and yes, the cost of healthcare. We want to make certain that the battle continues, that we bring people to the table, that it's been a failed effort to date. They need to come to the table. They're in charge of government in Washington. They have the presidency. They have the two houses of Congress. They need to act accordingly. We're going to continue to pursue every opportunity we can, including this message to them of a motion to discharge, so that we bring the vote on the premium incentives that are offered for healthcare that would allow for tax credits to bring down the cost. This whole effort, this session, needs to be about driving down the costs of doing business as a family.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there.
Thank
Congressman
you.
Paul Tonko, thank you so much for your time. Always
My pleasure.
appreciate talking to you.
Thank you.
A change to New York's energy policy causing concern among environmental advocates. When we return, hear from the executive director of the New York State Builders Association on how new policy can impact new building in the state.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. New York delaying the start of legislation that would have put new limits on new construction.
The All-Electric Buildings Act, which was scheduled to go into effect in January and would have prohibited natural gas and heating oil equipment in many new construction projects, including residencies. The act will be delayed until the appellate court decides whether the law is allowed to stand.
Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay supporting the move, calling the act financially burdensome. He went on to say, quoting now, New Yorkers face enough burdens as it is, and removing natural gas, propane, and oil as heating options would only drive costs higher. Families cannot afford another mandate that makes everyday life more expensive and less reliable. Joining me now to give additional insight on the impact this is going to have is Mike Fazio, Executive Director of the New York State Builders Association. Mike, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Boy, this has got to be a whirlwind for someone in your business right now. Explain to those who haven't really followed this closely, the state trying to make us more green had this, is it a law in place or a rule that was going to start January 1st saying all electric for new buildings? I believe it was 7 stories or under, if I read articles correctly, but now it's on pause. Walk me through what was going to happen and what's happening now.
Starting January 1st, the law is in place that all new buildings 7 stories and under will not be able to have any gas or propane, only all electric. So any new home built from January 1st forward would have to be all electric.
And what's happening with the courts? That's on pause now?
The court, there's been an agreement between the two parties to put it on pause. And I just think it's a very pragmatic, whether the governor was involved or not, I think if she was, it's very pragmatic leadership on her part, because as there's no secret, we are in a severe housing shortage in New York State, and we need to produce housing quickly and more affordably.
And was this going to make that more difficult to say that these all had to be all electric, these houses?
Absolutely, because it eliminates the uncertainty of builders being in a purgatory, so to speak, where they've started projects and they have infrastructure in the ground, gas infrastructure, and they would be in a situation where they'd have to give up that infrastructure and move a project midway through all electric. And in New York State, it is very long to go from buying property to actually building the home. It could take several years, and a lot of these projects are phased. And ultimately, what it would have done, had this not gone into effect, is it would have clogged the pipeline of new homes at the very time we need to make houses more affordable and build more houses in New York.
If you were started on a project and this went one way or the other, and obviously they're putting a pause on it, you would have been grandfathered in, right? You would have been able to finish and have a gas stove and propane and those things, or oil if you wanted?
Had you started a project or had the definition they use, which is ambiguous in my view, is a substantially completed building permit application. So ostensibly, if you had a building permit, you'd be able to move forward.
I've never met somebody who likes to cook who likes cooking on an electric stove. So I want to ask you a simple question that I don't know if anybody at the state asked. I understand the motives for wanting to make us more green and help the environment. But do people want, I mean, you represent builders who build for people. Ultimately, you have real people who've got to say, I want to live in this house. Do people want this, or is this something that was kind of, in your opinion, being sort of, I hate to use the word forced, but I guess forced on people?
Yes, because although the law is very well intentioned, we all want a better climate, we all want cleaner energy, the unintended consequences was the lack of energy choice. You have home buyers who may be buying a $400,000 house, an $800,000 house, and they want to have energy choice. We had a builder from Western New York just a month ago. He lost 5 contracts because he wouldn't be able to make the deadline, and those homes would have been all electric. I'll give you another example. A major builder, a very large builder from the Rochester area, recently backed out of contracts to buy land in Western New York, Rochester, and the Capital Region, which would have amounted to over 1,600 new homes, and they put all those contracts on pause.
And I'm guessing that New York's a complex state. Manhattan's different than upstate New York, Buffalo, Plattsburgh, Schaghticoke outside of Albany, where it's very country. These laws, they seem like one-fit laws, and I'm guessing making everything electric, even though your intentions are good, it plays out differently based on where you are in the state, right?
That is absolutely correct. You know, we recently heard the governor up in Rochester was about 3 or 4 weeks ago saying we need to have an all of the above approach, and we are definitely behind an all of the above approach. We have to have common sense about our energy needs in New York State. It shouldn't be a one size fits all because the energy needs in New York City are different, much different than the town of Amherst or Plattsburgh or Rochester or Greenport in Long Island. And I think that this law was very urban New York City centric, where when you build high-rise buildings or 8, 10-story buildings, it's much more conducive to electric than home building.
And last question, Michael, even if we could wave a magic wand and make hundreds of thousands of homes electric right now to just help the planet, keep things more green, do we have the energy grid to supply all that electricity, or would we be going down a dangerous slope where we might be like California, where they're having brownouts or having people having to turn the lights off or keep things turned off for periods of time? Are we there yet with our grid?
We don't have the capacity yet. NYSO has said it. I think NYSERDA has said it. And what it should be phased in, because we need to build homes faster. We need to keep middle-class folks in this state. They're leaving. And I just want to leave you with one anecdote here. In New York, for every $1,000 price increase in a new home, nearly 7,000 New York working families are priced out of home ownership.
Wow, that's quite a number. All right, Mike Fazio, we'll have to leave it there. Mike Fazio with the New York State Builders Association. We do appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Newly elected mayor of New York City laying out priorities alongside other leaders. When we come back, details on the first event to feature both Zohran Mamdani and Governor Kathy Hochul, how ongoing issues in the city are impacting their working partnership in these early stages. By the way, if you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN. Welcome back. Mayor-elect of New York City Zohran Mamdani standing shoulder to shoulder with other leaders this week, highlighting his plans for the city.
This week's appearance making the first time the newly elected mayor and the governor held a joint meeting. Reporter Henry Rossoff with Pix 11 in New York City has more from the event.
Our new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, he talks about housing. He believes in this.
Governor Kathy Hochul shouted out Mamdani and his pledge to supercharge the construction of affordable housing as they gathered together to cut the ribbon on the new Urban League Empowerment Center. It received a lot of government subsidies to construct about 170 units of affordable housing as part of the project.
It represents the perfect example of mixed use.
But differences remain in the all-important relationship between New York's governor and mayor. Hochul has said she would hold the line on new taxes Mamdani wants and has been throwing cold water of late on his free bus plan. We were able to quickly ask Mamdani about this outside the event.
You know, I look forward to the relationship that we're building to serve a common set of constituents. New Yorkers are being priced out.
Can you change your mind on buses?
I'm excited, just as I was on October 23rd, about making buses fast and free.
At the ribbon cutting was Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who has expressed concern about Mamdani's ability to protect Jewish New Yorkers. Nevertheless, Gillibrand said she's already engaged with Mamdani's team about actions the Trump administration might take related to funding or sending in the National Guard after he's sworn in January 1st.
I'm going to make sure that I protect this city, protect the mayor and the governor from whatever assault President Trump tries to put on the people of New York City, and we will stand united to fight against whatever President Trump throws at us.
Mamdani was also seen with the Reverend Al Sharpton, who offered a review of how Mamdani was building his administration so far.
I think that we're looking for diversity, and I think that the mayor-elect has reached out, and he's getting the right counsel so far. But the proof is in the pudding before I cut a slice.
Now that Congresswoman Elise Stefanik has officially entered the race for New York governor, attention's turning to who might replace her in Congress. Several candidates have already stepped forward, while others are kind of weighing their options right now. With the election still nearly a year away, there's time, but the field for the New York's 21st is beginning to take shape. Among the first to announce their candidacy, Democrat Blake Gendebine, a North Country dairy farmer. Also joining the race, Dylan Hewitt. He's a South Glens Falls native who previously worked as a White House aide, trade official, and under the Biden administration. There's also Bridie Farrell, a North Country Democrat, former U.S. speed skater. She's mulling over a decision to run as well.
I'm running to replace Congresswoman Stefanik in New York's 21st district.
I'm running to be the next congressman in New York 21. I'm a Democratic candidate in this primary.
I'm considering right now is how best I can contribute to the effort, right? Like, I live in the North Country where I know it's a far drive to healthcare, where I know that public schools need assistance, where all these things exist. And I'm trying to figure out how I can best move along the causes that I think will support so many people.
On the Republican side of the ticket, no one's officially announced to run yet. However, a man named Anthony Constantino, he's the CEO of a company called Sticker Mule. He says he is still deciding whether or not to jump in. Stick around, back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Finally, in Empire State Weekly, it's time to say goodbye to the penny. U.S. Mint producing the final penny on Wednesday of this week, each coin costing 4 cents to make a single penny. By choosing to stop making them now, the government's going to save more than $50 million a year. This has caused a shortage and some headaches, though, for retailers.
Some retailers are making price adjustments to bring costs to the nearest nickel. There are still 300 billion pennies in circulation. Next week, we'll look to hear from an economic expert on the impacts this will have.
For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you next week.
And don't you forget, you can watch this show, Empire State Weekly, wherever you are in New York State. Here's the full schedule of the show on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.